Thanks everyone for joining us. This is the uh, introductory meeting for the 2023 NNCI Nanotechnology Entrepreneurship Challenge. Hopefully you've all seen the call. There's an RFP out that details what the application will entail. It's very simple. It's a one-pager. Very simple. They're due February 11th. And I just wanted to, I like to have these sessions just to help familiarize you with the program and address any questions or concerns that you might have. So just a reminder, this is being recorded so that we can share it with additional students who may not have been able to join us. And yeah, we'll dive right in here. So the motivation for the program, I like for folks to understand why we have this program is that the world needs nano-savvy entrepreneurs. So folks who we're working with, whether they're affiliated with our NNCI sites or working in a nanoscience program somewhere across the US, they have unique skills that we would like to help them translate into a new generation of nano-savvy innovators and entrepreneurs. Folks who have understanding in nanoscale science and engineering, who can help use that understanding to solve real world problems. And so that's our initial motivation here. You probably, for some of you, you may have already seen the Nano for Earth event that kicked off last week up in Washington, DC, which was focused on mobilizing the nano community to solve global climate challenges. That's not exactly the same as our program, but our program certainly ties into this. And I think it's indicative of a lot of things that are going on across the US and around the world that are aimed toward helping the students, entrepreneurs, researchers, folks across the spectrum to look at strategies of how they can use nanotechnology and related technologies to solve some of these pressing global concerns that we're dealing with. First thing I want to give you a heads up on, some of you may not be very familiar with what I mean when I say NNCI. And what the NNCI is the National Nanotechnology Coordinated Infrastructure. And the folks who have had some experience in nano, you know that you're often working with tools that are over $1 million. These are very expensive, high-end microscopes that take a lot of training to operate. And there's a lot of related tools that we use in the nano domain. And those tools can be limiting in terms of what we can do with nano. And they can be particularly limiting for entrepreneurs. I mean, these aren't tools that you can just readily purchase. And so they're often based at university research centers, and entrepreneurs, other researchers, folks can access them there and specifically access the expertise that's needed to run those tools and answer important questions about materials and nano-enabled technologies. And so the NNCI provides those tools to people all across the country and around the world. And the dots that you see there on this map indicate the locations where the 16 sites comprising the US NNCI are located. And I'm talking to you from Virginia Tech, which is right there in the little on the border there between Virginia and West Virginia. And we have a center here that's part of that's focused on earth and environmental nanoscience. But there are many folks joining us from across the country who focus on different areas of nanotechnology. And that's what the NNCI is all about. So this is a large group across the country supported by the National Science Foundation. And when we talk about Ntec, the focus of Ntec is on a really unique part of the pipeline from translating a research discovery that we come up with in an academic laboratory or a university lab and taking that across the spectrum to where it can actually, that discovery can actually turn into applied research, a product, or some service that's offered to people beyond the academic environment. And if you have had any experience with this sort of process, you know it can be quite challenging. And where most of us are located is indicated by that little "you are here" graphic. A lot of us, we're based in universities and national labs. We're working on problems with a discovery or basic research type of perspective. Some of you will dabble in the applied research areas. But what I really like for our students to understand with Ntec is not so much the this basic research process, but the process of going a little bit further, and that's really the point where Ntec tries to help you get some experience. So it's not the same exactly as laboratory research that some of you might be undertaking, but your laboratory research is a really great start to help you participate in Ntec and learn what comes after some of these basic research questions are answered. And we call this gap between the research that we're doing in universities and national labs and industry, the commercialization valley of death. And the reason they call that the valley of death is because there's a lot of really good ideas that don't make it across there, whether it's funding or people just run out of steam to push the idea along. It's a really challenging area to navigate. And see, so what we want to do is try to equip you with some tools to help you understand what it takes to get across that valley. Our Ntec awards, and I'll talk a little bit more about the funding here, are meant to help encourage innovation and entrepreneurship among students and postdocs that are involved in sites of our NSF-funded NNCI. They're meant to help foster diverse and inclusive entrepreneurship. So we have a specific aspect of the program that's focused on underrepresented groups and minorities. The goal is to help students use nano to solve real world problems. Again, this is a broad interpretation. There's some nano components that are obvious in some of your projects and ideas, but there's also nano that may be somewhat hidden, and we can help you discover that. We'd like to educate students, use these Ntec awards to help educate students on the technology transfer process and programs like I-Core, which are aimed specifically at trying to get you across that valley of death I mentioned. We help you, we try to encourage commercialization of your original ideas or existing intellectual property that's available at your institution. And what I mean by that is, one of the questions I often get from students is, I'd like to participate, I'd like to learn more, but I really don't have a great idea. I don't know what I would do. And I have two responses for you on that. So one is, your idea doesn't have to be fully developed and fleshed out. That's the purpose of the program. So if you got a cool idea, something you want to try, give it a shot and we can help you formalize the idea and pull it together. If you have a hard time getting your idea together, feel free to go to your university's intellectual property office. They often have websites that are very accessible. You can go on, log on to those websites, and you can search technologies. You can search keywords like nano, and you can see some things that have already been invented at your university. And those kinds of things can become a nice foundation for you to, again, learn about entrepreneurship. And most importantly, the Ntec Awards provide funds and mentorship. And I want to talk a little bit about that. So we offer multiple cash and in-kind awards, and those are typically $500 for regular Ntec teams. We found that this is a good amount of money. We want the students to manage these resources in collaboration with a faculty mentor, but we like for the students to make the decisions about how to spend the money. And $500 is a good sweet spot. One of the first things you learn as a student learning to spend money in an academic environment is that it can be challenging to spend money. So that's an important part of the learning process, is you make the decisions about how the money's spent. We offer $1,000 diversity awards for teams that are affiliated with minority serving institutions. And the reason we offer the additional funding for those is because typically those involve travel. Those students may have to drive from their or travel in some manner from their minority serving institution to their local NNCI site. And we like to include additional funding support in there to help with that. We encourage the teams to participate in our virtual NNCI Ntec Accelerator program, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. The funds that you receive are used for qualifying purchases like materials for, maybe developing a prototype, software for developing your prototype, or instrument time at one of your participating NNCI sites. Using these expensive tools has costs associated with it. And we like for the Ntec Awards to help students be able to make purchases on that time, on those instruments, if that's what they need for their project. The number of awards depends on availability of funds and the sites participating at any given time. And so, my goal is to try and award as many teams as apply, but sometimes funds limit us there. So just keep in mind that that's a limitation that we have on our end. It's just the availability of funding is somewhat unpredictable. The program, the virtual Ntec Accelerator program, this is where you can connect with me and other participating mentors from across our NNCI to meet on a regular basis. We have some office hours where we touch base with you on three main areas. And the first one is your MVP, or your minimum viable product. We'll talk more, you'll learn more about that in the program. This is where you're using a nanotechnology, tinkering in the lab a bit. It's probably what led you to this program, because maybe you're doing a senior design project or some type of lab-based research, and you're already tinkering in the lab a bit, and you're starting to formulate some ideas about, well, if I had some additional resources, maybe I could do this, this, and this. And that's what item number one is all about, is really about developing that minimum viable product. And we'll talk with you about how you can do that over the course of this 7-week period. The second part of that is what's called business model generation. Business model generation and customer discovery are really critical elements of the NSF I-Core program. And what we try to do is help walk you through the process of, okay, you've got this nano-enabled tool or device or service. How do I bring that to market? That's what the business model generation process is all about. It's really helping you figure out different ways that a business could be constructed around that nano-enabled device or service. And there's a sequence to how we do that. You know, it ranges from figuring out how to write your business thesis, what it is, what's your value proposition, what do you, and who your customer is, how you segment your customers, and how you engage those customers to generate revenue, what resources, activities, and partnerships you'd need, how you set up a cost structure, that sort of thing. And we end the program with what's called our Ntec Showcase, which is, it's a 1-hour virtual segment where our students share 2-minute clips of the lessons they've learned throughout this 7-week journey. The third part is really customer discovery. This is where we challenge you to talk to people. As academicians and researchers, we become convinced that we have a great solution or idea, but we don't often challenge our thoughts in some ways on that. And so the customer discovery part of the Ntec journey is really all about having you think about who customers might be for your MVP and actually speak with some of those folks and get a sense of what they actually think about the problem you're trying to solve, whether they actually have the problem, whether they would really be a customer of yours, and what their real problems are. And it's a really valuable part of the Ntec Accelerator program, is just that piece of actually talking to people who may or may not have need for your product. And throughout this period, you're supported by our mentorship team, and then also reading. So if you're selected to participate, you'll receive 2 books that are really good tools, not just for the program, but for they're good tools to keep with you throughout your career in case you ever see the opportunity to participate in an entrepreneurial venture at some point in your career. The NNCI mentorship team is drawn from our NNCI working group, and specifically this year we have Yves Thoreau from San Diego, Paul Joseph from Georgia Tech, and then myself will be meeting on a regular basis with our Ntec supported teams. But we are also in constant communication with a really diverse group from across the NNCI who have interests in innovation and entrepreneurship, both at their site and across the entire NNCI. So it's really a phenomenal team that we have to pull from in terms of mentoring students. Now, to be eligible, teams must be, it's pretty simple, teams must be student or postdoc led. In the past, I don't think we've emphasized enough that postdoc component. So if you're a postdoc joining us today, I highly encourage you to participate in Ntec. We like for our teams to be connected to an NNCI affiliated faculty or staff mentor. By staff mentor, these can be people that maybe you're working with at an NNCI site right now, maybe someone who's helping you on an electron microscope or with another project. Those folks can certainly serve as mentors for these programs. Students must be enrolled at an NNCI site as either an undergraduate or a graduate student, and then also if you're a postdoc, you need to be employed at one of the NNCI sites. For the Ntec Diversity Award, similar requirement, but enrolled at a minority serving institution or linked through the REU program or a number of ways to an NNCI site. So if you're contemplating a diversity award, please reach out to me and ask for specific details about that, because again, we want to err on the side of supporting as many folks as we can through these diversity awards. So please don't let an eligibility question keep you from thinking about submitting. Please reach out to me for further information on that. So I mentioned the application is pretty simple. This is it right here in front of you. So we ask for a few things. It's one page. We like for you to limit to one page. You'll briefly describe your idea. Tell us what problem you're attempting to solve and how your idea offers a solution. How Nano can offer a competitive advantage in your particular solution. Think about your initial market. Who are you thinking about as a potential customer? And then really tell us a little bit about how you'd spend $500 for a regular Ntec award, or how you'd spend $1,000 if you're looking at the diversity award. And then the final piece of it is just let us know that you're connected to a faculty mentor who's happy to help you with things like spending your resources and getting you access to lab resources that you might need during your entrepreneurial journey. And if you don't need those resources, that's okay. You know, some folks develop software tools or things like that don't necessarily require a lab, but they can still participate in the project and spend money, spend the funds on either software or other things. So don't let that limit you either. So for the review criteria, a few of the things that we look at is the merit of the innovation that you're proposing. You know, what's the expected commercialization potential? Do you have a thoughtful, have you connected or made some initial connections there between what you're doing and the market that you're looking at? Is your budget reasonable? Do you have some sort of, is it clear to us how you're going to be spending the money? Is your team interested in participating in the Ntec Accelerator program, where we can help you more? And then, of course, the availability of funds is always an issue there. We expect to announce the winners by early March. The program will kick off in mid-March. It'll run for 7 weeks, and we'll wrap up with the 1-hour virtual Ntec Accelerator the week of May 2nd. The goals and expectations are to have fun, make it yours. I really like for this to be an enjoyable effort. I recognize that a lot of our students have a lot of things going on. Ntec isn't meant to be a distraction for you. It's meant to help maybe bring out a part of your interest that is maybe being underexplored through some of the other things that you're doing with research and classwork. And there's not a lot of opportunities for students to engage in entrepreneurial activities. And so Ntec aims to help you with that. We'd like to see students leverage this opportunity for bigger and better things, winning in their local entrepreneurship challenges. And maybe if you've been thinking about NSF I-Corps, it's an opportunity for you to get a taste of what I-Corps is like without the full commitment of I-Corps. And it would help really prepare you in a number of ways for being very competitive in an I-Corps program. And then again, I mentioned the end of the semester NNCI Ntec Showcase. And we'll recognize the top teams through that program. We have an external panel that we bring together for that to help us recognize those teams. And in the past, we give a nice little entrepreneurial award to those teams and recognize them. There's the potential for us to maybe do some additional things in terms of travel for these top teams this year. We have not confirmed those yet, but we will have that information available at the time that these awards are made. But again, it would be an opportunity to recognize the top performing teams in this program, folks who really use the opportunity to focus on MVP development, focused on developing a sound business model, worked on discovering the value proposition that they offer to specific customer segments through the customer discovery process. Those are really the elements that go into making a winning team in Ntec. I have a brief video here I could share with the team or share with everyone to just give you an example of one of our previous teams, which was led by Alex Abibi, Garrett Betzko, and Eduardo Gonzalez. So I'll briefly play that for you now. Can you hear that okay, Paul?
No, we can't hear anything.
You can't hear? Okay,
No.
we're gonna skip the video.
No audio.
No audio. Okay. I think that's gonna be a problem. So again, if you're interested, I'm happy to share that with you. It's a 2-minute video, but technical glitch. We'll share that by another means. So with that's essentially the program. And at this point, I'm happy to entertain any questions that you folks might have.